We've developed a set of science that has figured out how to penetrate the skin. So we're taking drugs from the surface of the skin deep into the blood with the speed of a needle and the efficiency or bioavailability better than a pill.
Wait a minute. You can put something on my skin and get it into my bloodstream?
Yep.
Hello, I'm Dr. Grant Stevens, and welcome to the Technology of Beauty, where we get a chance to interview the movers and shakers of the beauty business. And today we have an absolute mover and shaker. We have Mr. Ryan Beal from Dyve Technologies, and we're going to be interviewing him today and getting to know Ryan. He's a dear friend of mine. Ryan, welcome to our program.
Thanks, Grant. It's great to be here. Appreciate you asking me.
Thank you very much for coming in today. So tell me a little bit about yourself. First of all, where'd you grow up? Where'd you go to school? Let's start at the very beginning.
Yeah. So I'm a kid from Colorado. Grew up in a relatively small town about an hour north of Denver, Greeley, Colorado, and had a great upbringing there. Single mom, brother. After my time in Greeley, I was a science nerd growing up. Played high school football as well, and went from there up to Dartmouth for my undergraduate work. And New Hampshire was a great place for me. Reminded me a lot about the mountains of Colorado. And it was like summer camp year round.
That's what it seems like. Hangover, right?
That's
right.
Hangover,
New Hampshire.
Hanover, but yes. Had plenty of those.
Where'd you go to
too.
med school?
So after Dartmouth, I ventured down to Philly and went to UPenn for medical school. Yep.
And then did you do a residency, or what happened next?
No, Penn was one of those big turning points in my life when I was there for medical school. I was, as I mentioned, science geek growing up, and kind of had my head down. Was going to be a physician. Was a biophysical chemistry major at Dartmouth. Went to Penn thinking I was going to be a doc. Started taking classes at Wharton while I was at Penn, and that got me really interested in the business side of medicine. So while I was there, thought about getting my joint MD MBA. And one of my mentors at the business school at Wharton said, Ryan, you're straight out of school. You don't have any business experience on your resume. You should really go beef that up a little bit before applying to Wharton. Everybody here has years of experience out in industry before they even show up at our front door. So I said, do you have any suggestions? Like I'd love to get my MBA and would love to come to Wharton. And he said, well, McKinsey is this consulting firm that for the first time is accepting non-MBAs or non-business students for summer internship programs. I said, who do I call? And I hadn't heard of McKinsey at the time. Long story short, did a 3-week summer internship at McKinsey between my 3rd and 4th year of medical school. That led to a job offer, and deferred the match and doing my residency, and thought I'd go to McKinsey for a couple years, get my on-the-job MBA, and then go back and do general surgery. I was headed down the orthopedic surgery route. A couple years, went a couple times at McKinsey, and ended up being there 6 or 7 years, and got sucked into the business side of medicine.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you were at McKinsey 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, about 7 years.
And then after that, where'd you go?
So I left McKinsey when my first son was born. I was always on the road with McKinsey and loved the experience I had at McKinsey, but for me personally anyway, wanted to spend more time with my son and wanted to be the dad that was around, could coach the little league teams, do all that. So I left McKinsey in 2007 with really no plan other than I've always been entrepreneurial at heart. So I left and said I'm gonna figure it out. And over the past dozen or so years, I guess now it's longer because my son's 14. So over the past 14 years or so, have just pursued a bunch of entrepreneurial interests in the healthcare space and life sciences space. So left McKinsey, did some consulting on the side, started some aesthetic practices, started a couple businesses, and have just done a series of startups since then.
And then you ended up starting Ampersand, which is now Dyve.
That's
right?
correct.
So tell us a little bit about Ampersand. What is Ampersand, or what is Dyve, and how did we get to where you're at right now?
Yeah, so Dyve is obviously something I'm really excited about. We've developed a set of science that has figured out how to penetrate the skin. So we're taking drugs from the surface of the skin deep into the blood with the speed of a needle and the efficiency or bioavailability better than a pill.
Wait a minute. You can put something on my skin and get it into my bloodstream?
Yep.
What if it's a bad thing?
So that's one of the challenges, right? The skin's there for a reason, and it's to keep water in and bad stuff out. And that's one of the needles we had to thread, or the eye of the needle that we had to thread, was how do you carry these drugs through, but still allow the skin to do its job? And that's part of the art and the science that we've figured out.
So what sort of molecules or substances can you take through my skin and get into my bloodstream? Could you bring antibiotics or therapeutics for high blood pressure or immunization? What can you take through?
That's one of the things that excites us most is, transdermal drug delivery has been the holy grail for a long time. And there are patches and there are things that get a small subset of drugs through the skin. What excites us is the breadth of molecules that we've been able to get through the skin. We're not sure what that boundary is, but basically we believe the boundary is going to be delineated by the size of the molecule. But what excites us is we're getting molecules through the skin that previously have never been able to get through, and we're doing it, we're detecting it in the blood within minutes.
So I have patients that come in with estrogen patches.
Yep.
How are you different than a patch?
So the hormone patches, nicotine, scopolamine, some of the pain medications, they're all small drugs from a molecular weight perspective, and they're all moderately fatty. Those will get through the skin, and patches do a great job for that subset of drugs. They're about 30. They're less than 30 FDA-approved drugs that can be delivered through the skin. And
you say they're small and fatty. What do you mean by fatty?
So they're lipophilic, or they dissolve in fat. They're oil friendly, if you will.
Okay.
Our skin is much like a brick wall, where our skin cells are the bricks, and the mortar between the bricks is lipid. So if you think of your skin as a brick wall, the patches work by essentially trapping water evaporation from the skin. That causes a modest breakdown in the barrier function of the skin.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as that patch is loaded with a small molecule that is also lipophilic or oil friendly, it will diffuse through the skin. So for the 30 or so drugs that are approved, where you need small doses, a chronic delivery of the drug, patches work great. The interesting thing to us is there are about 7,000 other drugs that are FDA approved. Most of those are not compatible with patch technology. They're either too big, they're water soluble instead of fat soluble. There's some key chemical properties that define what's more applicable to skin penetration. But 98% of the drugs that are out there today aren't friendly with patches. They can't get through the skin. And so what we've figured out is a way to essentially soften up that mortar and allow a broader set of drugs to get in very quickly.
Is anybody else doing this?
Well, transdermal drug delivery is one of the most studied areas of drug delivery out there, and it's been studied for half a century. Even today in the world of COVID, there's a worldwide conference once a month on transdermal drug delivery.
Is that right?
So there's a lot going on at the academic level and at the industry level, but no one has cracked the code that we're aware of. Certainly with the efficacy that we're seeing.
So what sort of molecules are you delivering now?
So our most advanced asset is in phase 2 study for the treatment of acute gout. In that case, we're delivering sodium bicarbonate through the skin into the joint space. Sodium bicarbonate, long history of safety, but it hasn't been shown to be able to get through the skin. It's a water-soluble drug, and we're taking that through and having very quick impact on gout.
Now wait a minute. Sodium bicarbonate, isn't that baking soda?
That's baking soda, that's
okay.
right.
So gout is a arthritic issue, right?
Yep.
Acute pain and so forth. And what's the problem? What is the actual pathophysiology of gout? What's going on? To explain to our audience what gout is all about and how can baking soda on my skin make my gout go away?
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. So gout, the pain of gout is caused by monosodium urate crystals, which is a nice fancy way of saying it's a salt in your joint. So it's a salt crystal in your joint. Your joint space, as most of your viewers will know, should be nice and smooth and well lubricated, and that's nice and pain-free. But if you can imagine having a couple grains of sand in your joint space, that becomes very painful very quickly. What's interesting is monosodium urate, the solubility of it is highly linked to pH, or the acidity.
Okay.
As your joint becomes more acidic, more crystals form. And if we're sitting at a bench top and we alkalized a solution of monosodium urate crystals, in other words, if we got rid of the acidity, those crystals disappear. They dissolve back into solution. So it's that very simple chemistry that we're exploiting. And on the bench top, it's simple. But when it comes to a human or an animal, it's very hard to do because it's very difficult to deliver those alkalizing agents into the joint. And so as long as those crystals are there, you're in pain. So the current therapies work by trying to clear those crystals out through the urine, essentially. And that takes time. It takes days. So when you have a gout attack today, it lasts 2 to 5 days. And that's just how long it takes to clear out those crystals.
Okay.
In our trials, what we're seeing, in our first human trial, we saw patients getting relief in 15 to 30 minutes.
15 to 30 minutes,
Yep.
They're pain-free?
Yep.
So why can't they just eat sodium bicarbonate?
So, yeah, that's a great question. And it's something that people have studied for other indications, is delivering it orally. The challenge with that is our gut, and in particular our stomach, is highly acidic. And so if you try to deliver these agents orally, they get consumed in the stomach. It eats up all the sodium bicarbonate and also causes all kinds of GI distress and issues, gas, bloating, etc. And so it's not a viable way to deliver the drug. So by taking it topically, you can deliver it right where you need it and get it in quickly.
So they rub this sodium bicarbonate on their joints, or do they rub it where it's hurting, or can they rub it anywhere? How's that work?
Well, one of the challenges with gout, and as some of your viewers will know, it's extremely painful. So people describe when they're having a gout attack, typically in the big toe as the most common area. They describe even a sheet from their bed. If it touches their big toe, it feels like a red hot needle poking their toe. It's extremely, extremely painful. And so in theory, we'd love to put it right where the pain is, but people don't want to touch an affected joint because it's that painful. So we apply it just upstream, if you will, of the affected joint.
Like on their foot?
Yeah, on their foot or lower leg. And we get the sodium bicarbonate into the bloodstream there, and it gets carried down to the affected joint.
How common is gout?
So gout is one of the fastest growing diseases out there today. It affects about 10 million Americans. On average, someone with gout will have a gout attack about once a year. Of course, the frequent flyers, the more serious patients, will have 3, 4, 5, 6 attacks a year. It's quickly growing. It's associated with diabetes, obesity. So, just given the demographics of society, it's one of the fastest growing therapeutic areas.
That's interesting, and it's sodium bicarbonate that you're delivering to the space, right? That's taking the crystal away. It's like it's putting it into solution. Is it the crystal, like the salt crystal, goes away, but it's actually uric acid? And
so it
becomes
a
soluble.
Exactly, just by changing the pH.
So what about other uses of sodium bicarbonate? Like, for instance, when I go work out, I get lactic acidosis, my thighs hurt and so forth. Could you apply that to me to make my workouts easier? Or?
Yeah, so we have a affiliated company that we've actually commercialized a product there that's being used by a number of professional athletes and weekend warriors and everyday Joes alike for athletic improvement of athletic performance for exactly what you just described.
So I can rub it on my legs and my pain will go away, or I can work out harder? How's that work?
It's the pain will go away. It'll push out the burn that you feel.
Right.
Where most of the athletes experience the biggest impact is on the recovery. So there will be some modest performance improvement while you're out in your event. We have a number of NFL teams, NBA teams, Major League Baseball, NHL teams. A bunch of the guys in the Tour de France, which is going on right now, are using it. They find that the primary benefit is the improvement in recovery afterwards. So there's less lactic acid buildup while they're performing at peak, and they can recover faster and hit it hard the next day.
And it's not cheating?
Right now, it's not cheating. It's certified. Certified by sport. It's not a banned substance. A lot of these guys previously, when I say these guys, men and women, professional athletes and weekend warriors, were using bicarbonate orally because it is associated with some modest improvements there. And there have been a bunch of published studies that show that. The challenge is the GI distress. Now, if you're a professional athlete, you may be willing to deal with the GI distress if it's going to help your performance. So the concept has been out there for a long time. We've just taken that concept and exploited it in a much more efficient way.
And the NFL or NHL approves it?
Yeah, they use it all the time.
Is that right?
Yep.
I'll be darned.
Yep.
Okay, so that's sodium bicarbonate. What other chemicals have you
Well, I was
played
just
with?
going to do a double click on sodium bicarbonate for a second,
Okay.
Grant, because the athletic performance is very exciting. But back on the medical side, there's so many other indications that are linked to acidity. That's what gets me excited, whether it's oncology, atherosclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis. There's a number of indications where controlling that local acidity has major implications. So that's what gets me excited, keeps me awake at night, thinking about how else we can exploit that pH differential.
Well, you mentioned cancer, oncologic issues. We know that metastatic lesions create an acidic environment, right?
That's right.
Could we possibly decrease metastasis, or could we cure cancer potentially? Or
Well, that's one of the areas that gets me most excited. I mean, our science. I look at where we want to go with the company, and today there are basically two ways you get drugs through the skin. You take a pill or you use a needle. I want to shift that paradigm so in the future we think of there are three ways to get things through the skin. There's a needle, there's a pill, and there's Dyve. Oncology is one of those areas where I think we can have a transformative impact, whether it's using buffering agents to help with metastases or buffering agents to improve the efficacy of existing drugs. One of the challenges with cancer, as you already mentioned, is it creates a highly acidic environment. And it's much like the athletes we were just talking about. Anytime you have a system, meaning a human body or part of the human body that's highly metabolic,
right,
like the cyclist that's riding up a steep hill and generating lactic acid, cancer is very similar in that it's highly metabolic and there's not enough oxygen. As a result, it creates acid around a cancer cell. As you pointed out, that leads to metastases. The other thing it does, it makes it very hard for existing drugs to work because that acid mantle around a cancer cell makes it harder for those drugs to get into the cancer cell where they need to work, whether it's chemotherapeutics, immunotherapies. So not only do I think we can have an impact on metastases, but I also think we can enable existing drugs to work multifold better than they're working today.
have you actually done this in animals or humans? Is this theoretical, or have you actually done this?
No,
studies?
so it's been well studied in animals, and it started before us with orally delivered therapies in a number of different animal models, primarily focused on mouse models, looking at metastases in a number of different tumor types, from breast cancer, prostate cancer, melanoma, the list goes on and on. So the concept was validated in animal models with orally delivered sodium bicarbonate.
Okay.
The challenge was, as they go out to humans, the human gut is much more acidic than an animal gut. So oral delivery didn't work for the reasons we talked about earlier.
Right.
So we went back to some of the leading researchers that had published with orally delivered buffering agents and said, we want to recreate your study. We want to do it topically and see if we can duplicate what you were able to achieve with orally delivered drug. And the punchline is we've done small-scale animal studies in mouse models where we've shown dramatic decreases in breast cancer metastases using just topically delivered sodium bicarbonate wrapped with our science.
What do you mean by dramatically reduced? Give me an example, a number. Give our audience. What does that mean?
It means 70% reduction in metastases.
So these mice that otherwise have breast cancer, you put this topical sodium bicarbonate on them and they have a 70% survival rate versus not doing it?
Versus not. That's correct. That's correct. And by the way, that's similar results that they've seen with orally delivered drugs. We're taking a lower dose, but topically, and seeing the similar results. So our next steps there, we want to validate it across different tumor types. But then also where I think the big nearer term opportunity is to combine it with existing drugs that are out there today being used, whether it's the checkpoint inhibitors, other weak-based chemotherapeutics, that we can take their efficacy from the low teens in terms of efficacy and double, triple that.
That is super exciting.
Yeah.
That's revolutionary.
Those are some of the things that keep me awake at night.
I don't blame you. Now, something that comes to my mind is immunizations.
Yep.
I think of third world countries.
Yep.
And I think of the challenge is getting to these people and immunizing them from all communicable diseases. And actually, we have COVID now. I mean, it's so appropriate. But even before COVID, measles, mumps, chickenpox, all sorts of things, polio,
Yep.
and so forth. Can you get molecules that big across the skin?
So we don't know is the short answer. We're actually in the early stages of a collaboration on an antigen for COVID. As you can imagine, in any country, needle-based delivery is a challenge, but particularly in third world countries. And so we're looking at taking those antigens through the skin, or at least deep enough into the skin to generate an immune response. They're large, and that's one of the problems with vaccines broadly and biologics broadly, is we've focused to date on small molecules. Now we're doing much larger small molecules than have previously been delivered through the skin, but we're still on the kilodalton range, so 1,000 single-digit kilodalton molecular weight. As you started getting into the vaccine world, you're talking 10, 20, 30 kilodaltons, 140 kilodaltons as you get into the antibodies. So you get much larger than we've done before. Given our mechanism of action, we believe we'll work with large molecules, but I think that's for us to find out where is that boundary lie. But we'll have some early results, hopefully later this year, or at least giving us a clue of whether we're seeing a signal with some of these bigger molecules.
So you're working on COVID type things now?
Yep.
How about something like diabetes? So people have to inject insulin. Is there any chance you could have a topical insulin?
Yeah, there's certainly a chance. So, and that's you're talking about single-digit kilodalton size, 6 kilodaltons. So that's less of a stretch than some of the antigens we're talking about for COVID, et cetera, but still larger than what we've done to date. The largest molecule we've got through the skin with solid data that we're out talking about publicly at least is cyclosporin, which is 1.2 kilodaltons. And cyclosporin is an interesting one that we're quite excited about because people have been trying to get that through the skin for a couple decades. And
tell us about cyclosporin. What is cyclosporin?
So cyclosporin, long story short, it's an immunosuppressive. It's commonly used in organ transplant, but from a beauty perspective and aesthetic perspective, it's commonly used in psoriasis. And when I say commonly, I should say it's in a targeted way, it's used in psoriasis, but orally delivered.
Okay.
It's very effective, but it has a number of systemic side effects. So obviously psoriasis is affecting, you get psoriatic plaques on the surface of the skin.
Right.
Today you have to take it orally to basically access our interstate system, our distribution system, our vasculature, to take that drug from the gut out into the vessels and ultimately to your psoriatic plaque on your forearm.
Okay.
You can't put it on the skin today, but by accessing our interstate delivery system, our vasculature, you're also exposing the kidney, the liver, the rest of your body to cyclosporin, and it has fairly high liver toxicity issues, kidney toxicity. So the hepatotoxicity, nephrotoxicity are relatively high. If there were a way to deliver it topically, and the key is deliver a therapeutic dose topically without exposing the rest of the system to the drug, that's where it gets really exciting. It's huge market opportunity, a lot of unmet need, and we know cyclosporin is very effective. If you take it orally, you can start to see a reduction in the lesions within days. So a lot of times today it's used, when it's used for psoriasis, it's used for very short periods of time when someone has an outbreak or needs a fast, something fast acting. They have a wedding coming up, they want to get rid of the plaques. You'll take it for a very short course, and then you go back, and then you continue with your standard therapy. But if there were a way to deliver it topically without exposing the system to the side effects, it would be a game changer.
And have you done that?
So we're in the process of designing human trials to assess it. We have done. We know we can get in very effectively in animal models. In fact, we have higher bioavailability in murine models or mouse models. We have higher bioavailability than orally delivered cyclosporin.
Well, you mentioned beauty, and I would remiss. This is the technology of beauty. What about topical Botox? Could you deliver Botox to our muscles and take care of our wrinkles without needles? I hate needles.
So again, this is one we're quite interested for a lot of different reasons. From a business perspective and opportunity perspective, there's no doubt you know better than anyone that's a huge opportunity. From a science perspective, I get excited about it as well because the botulinum toxins, the molecules are large. So it presents a big challenge to the science. And people have tried it previously. There have been a number of attempts. Nothing is proven to be clinically and commercially viable. Again, to be determined whether we can do it, it's a huge challenge. But if we can, it says a lot about the science and what else we could do with it. So we're in active discussions with a number of the players in the space to see if we can give them some collective reason to believe that we could get it through the skin. And obviously, the aesthetic implications are very interesting, but also the therapeutic implications of Botox itself.
Right. And there's new longer-acting toxins like Botox on the market, and some coming on the market shortly. Yeah. It'd be interesting to see if you could actually drive that through the skin without the needles. And along that beauty business, what about fillers? HA, hyaluronic acid, and so forth. Is that too big of a molecule to take through the skin?
Well, it's if I think about it in terms of the opportunity with compared to a Botox, it's a similar size challenge, big molecule. I think where there's probably more interest clinically is the enzymes that break down the fillers and inhibiting those, and letting a filler last longer by getting that through topically. I think that's a more interesting near-term opportunity in terms of having a higher probability of success. But we'll see.
Blocking the inhibitor or blocking the enzyme that breaks it down, like hyaluronidase that breaks down hyaluronic acid?
Yep, inhibit a hyaluronidase. Yeah.
Are you actually researching that now, or is this totally theoretical on a whiteboard? Or?
It's theoretical. I mean, one of the challenges with where we are is, and we're lucky to have the challenges. There's so many opportunities and so many things we could study. So we have to take a very metered approach to where we put our resources. And our core focus right now is on the gout phase 2 study and getting that over the hump. That's a big one for us, just to establish human proof of concept in a phase 2 study. But in the background, we have all of these exciting ideas. And it's one of the challenges for all entrepreneurs. When you're onto something, you're surrounded by a lot of shiny objects that can distract you and take you off your focus. So we have to manage that challenge, very, very tightly, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to advance anything. And at the core, we think we're onto something so big that we've got to do it the right way and do things in the right order.
Sure.
Because resources are limited, like every company.
So I'm curious, are you working with big pharma at all, like the Pfizers of the world, the Mercks of the world? Are you working with big pharma, or are you just doing this by yourself up in the valley? What's going on?
Well, let's put it this way. We will be working with big pharma. We have a number of conversations going on with the Pfizer-like companies of the world, the Pfizers, the Mercks, the Novartis, the top 10 big pharma companies, and there's lots of interest there. So we're hoping to do some R&D collaborations on drugs that they have, where either there's a clinical opportunity to take a drug that's like we were talking about with cyclosporin, but that's delivered orally or injected, and there's an opportunity to improve the clinical profile of the drug by taking it topically, or extend the product life cycle of a drug that's facing patent expiry and is facing competition, but by packaging it a topical delivery, it extends the life cycle of that drug. So both of those reasons have proven to be pretty compelling to big pharma. And so we're looking to collaborate with them on a number of pretty exciting drugs. So the next time I'm on, we'll have something to talk about there. I'm sure.
You make me think. Are you publicly traded? Or are you? What's the deal with your company?
So we're a private company based up in Thousand Oaks. We have a great set of investors that have supported the journey so far. But we have our eye is on accessing the public markets. So we're putting ourselves in position to head down that path as early as next year. And a large part of that rationale, for us and our investors, it's not an opportunity to exit the business or liquidate holdings. It's an opportunity to access capital in a different way, so we can do some of these things that we've been talking about. So we can do more and we can do it quicker. But long story short, we're a private company and have a great set of supportive investors.
That is fantastic. It sounds like you're going to change the world in terms of how you deliver drugs. Everything's been through a needle or through our mouth.
Yep.
And now you're telling me that perhaps one day we'll have topical Botox or topical cancer therapy and avoid the toxicity issues. That's unbelievable to me.
And the other, the key is not only to me anyway, not only avoiding the tox issues, but you can take an existing drug and make it so much more effective. So, and that's really what gets me excited. Is it's hard to take a drug through the gut and deliver it in an effective way. The gut's very acidic. You have to worry about first pass metabolism. There are a lot of challenges. And, it's just like our sodium bicarbonate example. That's about as simple of a drug as you can get.
Sure.
You wrap it around our science, and now we've got a new drug that's more effective. And that's what that's what excites me, is looking at these existing drugs and say, how can we turbocharge that drug?
What do you call the substance that you have? Does it have a name? This vehicle that you have, does it have a name? So
we'll have to sit down and brainstorm some names. We don't have a name yet to the core underlying science, but that's something we're working together. We have all kinds of fun things we've thrown around internally, but it doesn't have a name yet.
Interesting.
But it will soon. I have to tap into your creative brain a little bit.
Well, I'd love to talk to you about it. Well, it's been so wonderful to have you today.
Yeah, thanks, Grant. It's been great to be here.
I can't wait to have you back after you've solved, cured cancer and topical Botox. Is there anything else you would like to tell us before we conclude?
No, I appreciate just being here. I think the main thing is, as you just said, we're looking forward to having some big impact on some of the biggest health challenges out there, and that's really what motivates us at the end of the day. We want to legitimize this third route of drug delivery as a viable alternative to pills and needles. And in the process, we want to have some major impact on some things like cancer or COVID or some of the major health challenges today.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Ryan, for
Thanks,
coming.
Grant.
Thank you all for watching, and stay tuned to the Technology of Beauty.